All right, Brian Flores has added the Houston Texans as a defendant to the lawsuit. His argument is that the Texans did not hire him in retaliation for the lawsuit that he filed on February 1. One of the reactions I have heard to this approach, because we reported during the Super Bowl pregame show that Flores would be taking this step when he does file an amended complaint, and he did, adds the Houston Texans, arguing that Lovie Smith was hired and not Brian Flores in retaliation for the race discrimination lawsuit that Brian Flores filed. People say, but they hired a black head coach, so what's your beef? What's your issue? This isn't about a race discrimination claim. This is about Brian Flores believing he would have been / should have been hired for the job if he hadn't filed his lawsuit. And that it's the filing of the lawsuit that made him a pariah in the eyes of the Houston Texans and a guy that they didn't want to make their head coach. A guy who is suing the NFL, the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, and the Miami Dolphins and is not going to drop the lawsuit should not be a head coach of an NFL team. That's the attitude that Flores will argue that the Texans had. And here's an example of what I was talking about earlier, Shireen and everyone else, as it relates to proving things not by getting someone to have a Jack Nicholson moment in A Few Good Men where he said, you goddamn right I did. That doesn't happen. Here's what you prove. Hey, look at this. We had 3 finalists for this job. Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, and Josh McCown. Gannon, a couple of days after that, is no longer in consideration. Comes down to Flores and Josh McCown. Then out of the blue, out of nowhere, comes Lovie Smith as a candidate, and within days after that, the head coach. Why? Because there's no way in hell they were going to hire Brian Flores, and there's no way in hell they could have hired Josh McCown after the Brian Flores lawsuit was filed. I think that if the Brian Flores lawsuit's never filed, they go ahead and hire Josh McCown. I really do think that. I think Brian Flores wasn't getting hired by the Texans either way. But without that lawsuit, they hire McCown. With the lawsuit, they hire Lovie Smith to make it look not so conspicuous. And I think, frankly, if the Texans knew at the end of the season what they know now, the Texans just would have kept David Culley, yep. Shireen.
Yeah, no question. I agree with you completely on all of that, Mike. And do you think that the timing of the Brian Flores lawsuit had to do with him knowing that they are feeling they were going to hire Josh McCown, and at that point saying, I'm not going to let this happen, I'm going to file this lawsuit now? Did the timing relate to that, do you think?
If I was Brian Flores, I would have waited. I would have waited for the Texans to hire Josh McCown. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And I don't know that we'll ever know the answer to this. I know, get ready, Buccaneers fans and Dolphins fans. I know that the Brian Flores lawsuit pulled the plug on the Tom Brady, Sean Payton package deal to Miami. And folks, that was happening. I'm telling you, I would bet everything I own on the fact that that was happening and that the Brian Flores lawsuit caused it to not happen. So, did Brian Flores file his lawsuit when he did to keep Tom Brady and Sean Payton from becoming the coach of the Dolphins? Was there a certain element of mischief making here? Was there a certain element of, I'll show you, Stephen Ross, who always gets what he wants? You got what you wanted by firing me, but you ain't getting what you wanted with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. I'm going to keep that from happening because I'm not going to wait to sue you, even though it's possibly in my best interest to let this hiring cycle play out. I remember at the time he filed the lawsuit, my first thought was, why now? Yeah. Why not let the hiring cycle play out? But you know what? I suspect Brian Flores knew what was going to happen. Tom Brady's going to retire. Tom Brady's going to end up becoming a minority owner of the Dolphins during Super Bowl week. That's what I firmly believe was going to happen. Sean Payton becomes the head coach within a couple of weeks after that, and then Tom Brady unretires and comes back to play for the Dolphins at some point during the spring. So, by filing the lawsuit the same day that Tom Brady retired, the same day, they had that thing locked and loaded and ready to go. Tom Brady retires, press the button, and there it all falls apart the same day. It's either coincidence or it's not. And I'm not saying that because, again, you're giving up a strategic edge, because it would have been better off to wait for the Texans to make their hire, for everybody else to make their hire. It would have been better to wait. And he claims it was what he had heard a few days earlier about the whole Brian Daboll and the text he got from Bill Belichick. And maybe it is a coincidence. Maybe it was the Giants thing that pushed him over the edge. But I still think it would have been strategically wise to wait. Go ahead and let them hire Josh McCown. Go ahead and let them do it, because it makes it even more glaring then from a racial standpoint when they don't hire Brian Flores or even consider Lovie Smith.
Mike, there are no coincidences. That's what I firmly believe, and I firmly believe that the timing was by design, and he affected the head coaching hires at two different places, at Miami and at Houston, because of his lawsuit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I've heard some other things along those lines, that basically for the jobs that were still open, there may have been an effort by the league to, push things a certain way to make things look better, because the league, even though it initially said this lawsuit is without merit, the league knew that there was plenty of merit, and there is plenty of merit. And look, I don't know what's ultimately going to be introduced. I don't know what the evidence will be. I don't know what a judge or a jury will do with this, but I just want the truth to come out. And I want it to come out in a public forum, in a federal courtroom, with the media there to hear the evidence, see the documents, understand the arguments, have it all happen in the open, not in some quiet conference room where the commissioner or someone the commissioner handpicks to handle the matter is making the decisions. That's not good for anyone. It's good for the league. It's good for the teams. It's not good for the truth. It's not good for progress. And it's not good for those of us who believe that wrongdoers should be held accountable. And I don't know that there's any wrongdoers here. Yeah. Let's see. Let's let it play out.
Let's find out.
If you're not worried about what a neutral body, I mean, just look at it that way. They're so concerned. They want to stack the deck. They want to have a rigged system, a kangaroo court that allows them to decide what's right and what's wrong, who's right and who's wrong, who's guilty and who's not guilty. They want to decide it in part because they don't want someone who is in a position to exercise true independence to be deciding whether or not the NFL was in the wrong. That tells you something right there. The fact that the NFL is so obsessed, not just with arbitration, but with arbitration presided over by the commissioner who is bought and paid for by the owners, that should tell you that they want to brush this under the rug, and they know that what they're brushing under the rug is dirt. I don't know what else you would brush under the rug, but you get my point. Yeah, you go.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.